You feel it, don't you? That subtle suffocation when someone's approval becomes your oxygen. The way your chest tightens when they withdraw their attention. How your thoughts spiral into desperate calculations of what you did wrong. You've been conditioned to believe that caring deeply makes you virtuous, but tonight you'll discover it makes you a prisoner. There's a weight pressing against your ribcage right now, the accumulated burden of every compromise you've made to keep someone else comfortable. Every time you swallowed your truth to preserve their peace. Every moment you chose their validation over your own voice. You tell yourself, this is what good people do, what loving people do, but you're beginning to suspect you've been lied to about the nature of both goodness and love. Look around at the evidence of your emotional imprisonment, the phone you check obsessively, hoping for their message, the careful way you craft your words, editing and re-editing to avoid their displeasure, the exhaustion that settles into your bones after every interaction because you've been performing instead of existing. This isn't connection. This is emotional servitude disguised as devotion. You've built your entire sense of self around the shifting sands of others' moods. When they're happy with you, you soar. When they're distant, you collapse. You've forgotten that your worth isn't a democracy where others get to vote on your value. You've handed over the keys to your emotional kingdom to people who don't even realize they're driving. The most insidious part isn't that you've given your power away. It's that you've convinced yourself this surrender is noble. You wear your people-pleasing like a badge of honor, your emotional availability like a crown. But crowns can become chains when worn by those who've forgotten the difference between ruling and serving. Tonight, you'll learn that the invisible chain wrapped around your throat isn't made of their cruelty. It's woven from your own desperate need to be needed. And the key to your freedom isn't in their hands. It never was. Every text you send too quickly, every favor you offer without being asked, every sleepless night spent analyzing their words. This isn't love, it's dependency wearing a beautiful mask. You've mistaken your need for their validation as emotional depth, but Machiavelli understood what you're only beginning to glimpse. Attachment is the enemy of power. You call it caring, but examine the mechanics more closely. The way your mood depends entirely on their response time. How you interpret their silence as rejection, their distance as punishment. The elaborate mental gymnastics you perform to excuse their indifference while condemning yourself for feeling hurt by it. This isn't the behavior of someone who loves. This is the behavior of someone who's addicted. Addiction always masquerades as something beautiful in the beginning. The rush you feel when they finally respond, the euphoria of their attention, the way their approval floods your system like a drug hitting your bloodstream. You've become a master at reading micro-expressions, analyzing tone, detecting the smallest shifts in their energy, not because you're intuitive, but because your survival depends on it. You've developed the hypervigilance of prey, constantly scanning for predators, except the predator isn't them, it's your own desperate need for their approval. Consider how exhausting it is to live this way, how much mental energy you expend, calculating your next move, crafting the perfect response, timing your availability to seem desirable but not desperate. You've turned love into a chess game where you're always thinking 7 moves ahead, trying to anticipate their needs before they even know they have them. Those who control you never chase you. They understand something you've forgotten, that the moment you become predictable, you become disposable. Watch how they move through the world, untouchable, unreachable, desired precisely because they cannot be possessed. They've weaponized what you've abandoned. Study them carefully. Notice how they never seem to need anything from anyone, how their mood remains steady, regardless of how others treat them, how they can disappear for days without explanation, and return as if nothing happened. This isn't cruelty, it's mastery of the fundamental law of human psychology. We desire what we cannot control. While you're busy proving your worth through constant availability, they're proving their value through selective absence. While you're demonstrating your care through immediate responses, They're creating mystery through delayed replies. While you're showing your interest through persistent effort, they're generating desire through strategic withdrawal. They've remembered what you forgot, that your value isn't determined by your usefulness to others. That mystery is more powerful than transparency. That being needed is less attractive than being wanted. That someone who can walk away at any moment is infinitely more compelling than someone who will endure anything to stay. You've been operating from scarcity, while they operate from abundance. You give because you're afraid of being left with nothing. They give when they choose to, because they have everything. You pursue because you fear abandonment. They attract because they've never feared being alone. This isn't about becoming cold or cruel. It's about understanding the difference between weakness disguised as kindness and strength that chooses to be kind. When you need nothing from them, everything they give becomes a gift rather than a necessity. When you can survive their absence, their presence becomes a choice rather than a lifeline. The power you've given them isn't theirs by right, it's yours by birthright, and it's time to take it back. You perform emotional availability like a trained actor. Believing authenticity means bleeding your heart onto every conversation, but you're confusing vulnerability with weakness, transparency with foolishness. The most magnetic people reveal themselves in calculated glimpses, never the full portrait. You've been taught that vulnerability is always virtuous, that emotional openness equals authenticity, but you've confused dumping your psychological baggage with being real. True vulnerability is precise. It's the right revelation at the right moment to the right person. It's not emotional exhibitionism disguised as depth. The most captivating people understand the power of the unrevealed. They share themselves in layers, each disclosure earned rather than freely given. They understand that mystery isn't deception. It's preservation of the sacred parts of themselves. They know that some depths are meant to be explored gradually, not excavated in a single conversation. You've been performing intimacy instead of building it. Real intimacy isn't about how much you reveal. It's about the quality of what you choose to share and when you choose to share it. It's about understanding that the most profound connections are built on mutual respect for each other's inner sanctum, not on mutual emotional exposure. Watch how they guard their inner world. Notice how they can be warm without being available, present without being possessed, caring without being consumed. They've learned the difference between being known and being transparent, between being authentic and being an open book that anyone can read without earning the privilege. Your mistake has been believing that being hard to read means being dishonest, but privacy isn't deception, it's self-preservation. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors that open for the worthy. Mystery isn't manipulation. It's the recognition that some things are too precious to be given freely to everyone who asks. Stop bleeding your soul onto every stage. Start choosing your audience with the same care you'd choose a surgeon. Count the cost. How many dreams you've deferred for their comfort. How many boundaries you've dissolved to keep them close. Your generosity has become your cage, your empathy, your weakness. You've given away pieces of yourself until you've forgotten what sovereignty feels like. The accounting is brutal when you finally do it, honestly. How many times you said yes when every cell in your body screamed no? How many goals you abandoned because they required your attention to shift away from managing their emotions? How many versions of yourself you've killed to become the version they preferred? You've been so busy being who they needed that you've forgotten who you are. Your personality has become a collection of responses to their expectations rather than expressions of your authentic self. You change your opinions to match theirs, modify your energy to complement their mood, reshape your dreams to fit their vision of who you should be. This isn't sacrifice. It's suicide by 1,000 small surrenders. Each time you choose their comfort over your truth, you die a little. Each time you silence your needs to amplify theirs, You fade a little more. You've become a ghost haunting your own life, watching from the shadows while someone else lives in the body you vacated. This stops now, not tomorrow, not next week, not when you feel stronger. Now, because every moment you delay reclaiming your sovereignty is another moment stolen from the life you were meant to live. Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be feared than loved because love is fickle but fear is constant. Detachment isn't cruelty, it's clarity. When you stop needing their approval, you stop being controlled by their moods. Distance becomes your domain, silence your strength. You've been operating under a dangerous delusion that emotional distance equals emotional coldness. But consider the difference between the needy lover who suffocates and the secure one who loves from a place of wholeness. The needy one loves desperately, while the secure one loves powerfully. The difference isn't in the capacity for love, it's in the need for it to be returned. Strategic distance isn't about becoming heartless, it's about becoming heart-smart. When you no longer need their validation to feel worthy, their validation becomes valuable. When you no longer fear their rejection, their acceptance becomes meaningful. When you stop chasing their attention starts chasing you. This is the paradox that the emotionally enslaved never understand. The more you need something, the less likely you are to receive it. The more you chase love, the faster it runs from you. The more you pursue approval, the more it eludes you. Desperation repels what indifference attracts. True detachment is the recognition that your emotional well-being cannot be held hostage by another person's choices. Their mood doesn't determine your worth. Their absence doesn't diminish your value. Their opinion doesn't define your reality. You exist independently of their perception of you. When you master this philosophy, something extraordinary happens. You stop reacting to their emotional weather and start creating your own climate. You stop being a passenger in relationships and become the driver of your own experience. You stop waiting for permission to feel good about yourself and grant yourself the authority you've been seeking from them. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear, clear about what you will and won't accept, clear about what you need and what you merely want, clear about the difference between connection and attachment, love and dependency, caring and obsession. From this clarity comes a quiet power that no external force can shake. Your absence creates a vacuum that your presence never could. When you stop filling every silence, stop answering every call immediately, stop being perpetually available, you transform from background noise into magnetic mystery. Scarcity awakens desire in ways abundance never will. You've been operating under the false economy of emotional abundance, believing that giving more would make you worth more. But you've confused value with volume, quality with quantity. You've become emotional wallpaper, always there, never noticed, taken for granted until someone thinks about redecorating. Consider how differently they treat the friend who's always available versus the one who's harder to reach. The available one gets the casual calls, the mundane complaints, the emotional dumping. The scarce one gets the important conversations, the genuine effort, the respect that comes with earned access. This isn't manipulation, it's mathematics. Humans are hardwired to value what requires effort to obtain and dismiss what comes too easily. Your constant availability has trained them to treat your attention as worthless because you've priced it at zero. You've taught them that your time has no value because you give it away without discrimination. Watch what happens when you stop being the solution to everyone's boredom, when you stop being the therapist for every emotional crisis that isn't yours, when you stop being the entertainment committee for people who've forgotten how to be alone with themselves. Suddenly, your company becomes valuable because it's no longer guaranteed. Your absence doesn't create loneliness in them, it creates awareness. Awareness of how much space you've been filling in their life. Awareness of how much emotional labor you've been doing that they never noticed. Awareness of how much they've been taking you for granted, because you never required them to earn your presence. The most powerful realization is this: when you stop making yourself indispensable, you become irreplaceable. When you stop trying to prove your worth becomes self-evident. When you stop chasing their attention, you discover they've been taking yours for granted precisely because it was always freely given. When you finally withdraw the constant stream of yourself that you've been pouring into other people's lives, you create space for them to miss you, and in that missing, they remember why they needed you in the first place. But by then, you'll have remembered why you don't need them. This version of you, the one who apologizes for existing, who shrinks to make others comfortable, must die tonight. You'll feel the grief of letting go of the familiar prison of others' expectations. But from this death emerges something far more powerful, someone who cannot be manipulated because they need nothing. The identity you've carried for so long feels like your skin, but it's actually your cage. There will be mourning for this old self. You'll miss the simplicity of being everyone's solution, the clarity of having your worth determined by external metrics, the strange comfort of familiar suffering. You'll grieve the relationships that only existed because you were willing to disappear within them. You'll mourn the version of love you thought was real but was actually just mutual dependency wearing wedding clothes. But death, even metaphorical death, is never the end. It's transformation. What emerges from the ashes of your people-pleasing self is someone unprecedented, a person who loves from fullness rather than emptiness, who gives from choice rather than compulsion, who cares from strength rather than weakness. This new self will be unrecognizable to those who've grown comfortable with your emotional servitude. They'll try to guilt you back into your cage, tell you you've changed, accuse you of becoming selfish. Let them. Their discomfort with your transformation is proof that it's working. The person you're becoming cannot be manipulated because they don't need external validation to feel whole, cannot be controlled because they've found their center, cannot be diminished because they've remembered their inherent worth. This person loves powerfully because they love from overflow, not from deficit. This death isn't violent, it's gentle, like falling asleep and waking up as someone who finally knows their own value. True detachment isn't hatred wearing a mask. It's the quiet confidence of someone who has found their center. You respond when you choose to respond. You engage when it serves your purpose. You care selectively, strategically, powerfully, not because you're heartless, but because your heart is finally your own. You're learning to distinguish between caring about someone and being controlled by that caring, between loving someone and losing yourself in that love, between being present for others and being absent from yourself. These distinctions create the foundation of what philosophers call emotional sovereignty, the ability to feel deeply without being destroyed by what you feel. Watch how different your interactions become when you engage from this place of centered strength. Your words carry more weight because they're not desperate attempts to maintain connection. Your silence becomes meaningful because it's not afraid of disconnection. Your presence feels more valuable because it's chosen, not compulsive. This calculated indifference isn't about becoming stone, it's about becoming water. Water that flows where it chooses, that cannot be grasped or possessed, that nourishes what deserves nourishment and simply moves around what doesn't. Water that's powerful enough to carve canyons, yet gentle enough to sustain life. You'll discover that people treat you with more respect when you're not desperately seeking their approval, that they value your opinion more when you don't automatically agree with theirs, that they're more interested in your company when it's not constantly on offer, that they love you more genuinely when that love isn't extracted under emotional duress. This is the paradox of detachment. The less you need from others, the more they're willing to give. The less you chase, the more you're pursued. The less you prove your worth, the more your worth becomes evident. Not because people are perverse, but because desperation repels what confidence attracts. Your heart is finally your own. Not because you've closed it, but because you've stopped giving others the keys to it. You love from choice now, not from compulsion, and that love, freely given rather than desperately offered, transforms everything it touches. You're discovering that the wholeness you sought in their validation was always available within you, that the peace you tried to earn through perfect behavior was your birthright, not their gift, that the love you begged for from others was a pale reflection of the love you denied yourself. For the first time in longer than you can remember, you're not performing, not calculating how your words will be received, not measuring your worth by their response, not contorting yourself to fit the shape of their expectations. You're simply being complex, multifaceted human, without apology or explanation. This freedom feels strange because you've forgotten what it's like to move through the world without emotional shackles, to speak without fear of disapproval, to make decisions based on your own values rather than others' reactions, to exist as the main character in your own story rather than a supporting actor in everyone else's. The relationships that survive this transformation will be fundamentally different, deeper, more authentic, more mutually respectful. The ones that don't survive were never relationships at all, but arrangements where you provided emotional labor in exchange for conditional acceptance. You're learning that isolation and solitude are not the same thing. Isolation is being cut off from connection. Solitude is being connected to yourself. And from this place of self-connection, you can choose your connections with others from wisdom rather than desperation. This isn't the end of your capacity to care. It's the beginning of your capacity to care wisely, to love powerfully, to connect authentically, to give from overflow rather than emptiness, to be in relationship without being consumed by relationship. You've found your way home to yourself. And home, you're discovering, is wherever you are when you're no longer afraid of being alone. From this moment forward, you operate from a position of inner abundance rather than desperate scarcity. You give from overflow, not emptiness. You love from strength, not weakness. You engage from choice, not compulsion. This is how you reclaim the power you never knew you had given away. The old rules that governed your emotional life are now extinct. The rule that said your worth was determined by how much others needed you. The rule that said love meant surrender. The rule that said caring required you to carry everyone else's emotions. The rule that said good people always put others first. These rules were never yours. They were programming installed by a world that benefits from your emotional labor. Your new rules are revolutionary in their simplicity. You give when you want to give, not when you feel obligated. You help when it aligns with your values, not when guilt demands it. You love when love flows naturally, not when desperation drives it. You care when caring feels authentic, not when caring feels compulsive. This doesn't make you selfish. It makes you selective about where you invest your emotional energy. Selective about who gets access to your inner world, selective about which battles deserve your attention, and which people deserve your care. This selectivity isn't cruelty. It's wisdom born from the hard-earned understanding that your energy is finite and precious. You're learning to love like a sovereign rather than a slave. Sovereign love doesn't ask for permission to exist. It doesn't apologize for its boundaries. It doesn't compromise its essence to accommodate others' preferences. It stands firm in its own worth while honoring the worth of others. From this place of inner abundance, your relationships transform completely. You attract people who appreciate strength rather than those who exploit weakness. You connect with others from wholeness rather than from woundedness. You build partnerships rather than dependencies, alliances rather than addictions. The power you reclaim isn't power over others, it's power over yourself. The power to choose your responses rather than being controlled by your reactions. The power to determine your worth rather than outsourcing it to others. The power to love without losing yourself in that love. This is your renaissance, the rebirth of the self you were before the world taught you to need approval to breathe. Welcome home. You wake up every morning and immediately reach for your phone, not because you need to check the time, not because you have urgent messages waiting. You reach for it because you need to know if you still matter to someone, anyone, in a world that seems to have forgotten you exist, the moment you stop performing for it. This is not connection. This is survival, and you have been surviving for so long that you have forgotten what it feels like to actually live. There is a moment in every person's life when they realize that the love they have been chasing, the approval they have been desperately seeking, the validation they have been trading their soul for piece by piece, was never real. It was always conditional. It was always transactional. It was always dependent on your ability to make yourself smaller, quieter, more convenient for the people who claimed to care about you. And in that moment of realization, you have two choices. You can continue the performance, exhausting yourself in the endless theater of being who everyone else needs you to be, or you can walk away from the stage entirely and discover what exists when you stop acting and start being. But walking away terrifies you, because if you are not who they need you to be, who are you? If you are not constantly available, constantly giving, constantly sacrificing your own needs for theirs, what value do you have? These questions haunt you because you have spent so long defining yourself through their eyes that you have forgotten how to see yourself through your own. You have become a mirror, reflecting back whatever image will earn you the scraps of affection they are willing to throw your way. And mirrors, no matter how perfectly they reflect, are always empty inside. The people who drain you have taught you that love is earned through suffering, that care is proven through sacrifice, that friendship is maintained through constant availability and endless emotional labor. They have convinced you that setting boundaries is selfish, that protecting your energy is cruel, that saying no makes you a bad person, and you believed them because the alternative, being alone with yourself, felt more terrifying than being depleted by them. But here is what they never told you. Here is what they could never tell you, because they do not know it themselves. The love that requires you to diminish yourself is not love at all. It is emotional vampirism, disguised as connection. You think you are being kind when you say yes to every request, when you drop everything to solve their problems, when you prioritize their comfort over your own peace. But kindness without boundaries is not kindness. It is self-destruction wrapped in the illusion of virtue. Real kindness requires discernment. It requires the wisdom to know when helping someone is actually enabling their dysfunction. It requires the strength to let people experience the consequences of their choices instead of constantly rescuing them from their own poor decisions. And most importantly, it requires the self-respect to understand that your well-being matters as much as anyone else's. Machiavelli understood something that your people-pleasing mind struggles to accept. He knew that the person who needs nothing from others holds all the power in every relationship, not because they are cold or cruel, but because they operate from a place of wholeness rather than lack. They engage with others from choice, not desperation. They give from abundance, not emptiness. And when someone shows them disrespect or takes them for granted, they have the inner strength to walk away because their sense of self is not dependent on external validation. You have been living from a place of emotional scarcity for so long that abundance feels foreign to you. You have convinced yourself that you must earn love, that you must prove your worth, that you must constantly demonstrate your value to the people in your life. But love that must be earned is not love. Worth that must be proven is not worth. Value that must be demonstrated is not value. These are all transactions disguised as emotions, and you have been paying a price that no human being should ever have to pay. The exhaustion you feel is not laziness. It is not weakness. It is your soul's way of telling you that you have been pouring from an empty cup for too long. Every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you smile when you want to scream, every time you prioritize their needs over your own, you betray yourself a little more, and that betrayal accumulates day after day until you no longer recognize the person staring back at you in the mirror. You see a stranger who has learned to perform love instead of feeling it, who has mastered the art of being what others need, while forgetting entirely what they themselves want. But there is something stirring within you now, a quiet rebellion that whispers in the moments between their demands, a growing awareness that the life you are living is not actually your life at all. It belongs to everyone else. Your time belongs to their schedules, your energy belongs to their problems, your emotions belong to their moods, your peace belongs to their chaos. And you, the person who is supposed to be living this life, have become a guest in your own existence, always asking permission to take up space in a world that you have every right to inhabit fully. This is not about becoming cold. This is not about shutting people out or building walls so high that no one can reach you. This is about understanding the difference between connection and codependency, between love and emotional slavery, between being kind and being used. This is about recognizing that the people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries, not guilt you for having them. They will celebrate your growth, not punish you for changing. They will support your journey toward wholeness, not try to keep you broken so they can continue to benefit from your brokenness. The voice in your head that tells you that you are being selfish for wanting more, for needing space, for refusing to carry burdens that do not belong to you, is not your voice. It is the voice of everyone who has benefited from your inability to say no. It is the voice of every person who has taught you that your value lies in your usefulness to them. It is the voice of a world that profits from your self-sacrifice and fears your self-realization, and that voice has no power over you unless you give it power. You feel it now, that unfamiliar sensation of breathing without permission, of existing without explanation. This is what you have been searching for in their approval, the feeling of being whole within yourself. Detachment is not isolation. It is liberation from the exhausting performance of being who others need you to be. It is the recognition that you can love people without losing yourself in them. You can care without carrying. You can support without sacrificing. You can be present without being consumed. For the first time in years, maybe decades, you are beginning to remember what it feels like to be comfortable in your own skin, to enjoy your own company, to trust your own judgment. You are discovering that the opinion that matters most is your own, that the approval you have been seeking from others was always meant to come from within, that the love you have been chasing in all the wrong places has been waiting patiently inside you, ready to fill the emptiness that you thought could only be filled by someone else. This is sovereignty, not the cruel, dominating kind that seeks to control others, but the quiet, unshakable kind that refuses to be controlled. It is the power that comes from knowing who you are when no one is watching, from being proud of the person you see in the mirror, from building a life that you do not need to escape from or apologize for. It is the strength that allows you to say no without guilt, to set boundaries without explanation, to prioritize your well-being without permission. The people who cannot accept this version of you, who miss the old you that said yes to everything and put everyone else first, are mourning their access to your energy, not the loss of your friendship. They are grieving the end of a dynamic that served them but depleted you, and their inability to celebrate your growth tells you everything you need to know about the true nature of your relationship with them. Real friends want to see you thrive, even if your thriving means they can no longer take advantage of your kindness. You are learning to love people from a distance when necessary, to care about their well-being without taking responsibility for their choices, to wish them well without allowing them to drain you dry. This is not cruelty. This is wisdom. This is the mature understanding that you cannot save people from themselves, and trying to do so will only destroy you both. You can offer support, but you cannot offer your soul. You can provide guidance, but you cannot provide your life force. You can share your energy, but you cannot sacrifice your essence. From this moment forward, you operate from a position of inner abundance rather than desperate scarcity. You give from overflow, not emptiness. You love from strength, not weakness. You engage from choice, not compulsion. This is how you reclaim the power you never knew you had given away. This is how you stop being a victim of other people's emotional dysfunction and start being the author of your own emotional freedom. This is how you transform from someone who exists at the mercy of others into someone who exists in mastery of themselves.